Welcome back to the Chronicle of the Central Plains Dynasty. I'm Red Dragon. In the last episode, we talked about Emperor Wen and Emperor Zheng, the boring father and son, spent 40 years, turned the Han Dynasty into a super treasury. The grain was so much that it was moldy, and so many copper coins that ramps rotted. The people were so rich that even thieves were unemployed, while other princes were playing with mud and chasing butterflies. What was he doing? Looking at the map. And then, a prodigal son came. Liu Che was a bit odd since he was a child. To be exact, he saw the large blank space in the north on the map, which was the land of the Huns. Little Liu Che pointed to the map and said, "One day, I will turn all this into the Han Dynasty." The eunuch next to him broke out in a cold sweat, thinking, this kid has big ambitions. Liu Che's mother was Wang Zi. She was not an easy person to deal with. Before entering the palace, she had already married and gave birth to a daughter. She remarried into the palace and finally became the queen. Her resume is simply amazing in the ancient harem. She teamed up with Princess Guantan Liu Pia and carried out a political marriage operation and pushed Liu Che to the position of crown prince. The original prince Liu Rong was deposed. In 141 BC, Liu Che at the age of 16 ascended the throne. 16 years old, everyone, which is still in high school today, worried about the monthly exam. Liu Che was already considering how to rule a super empire. You'd think he would panic. No, he was excited. He could finally do what he wanted to do, but he couldn't because there was an old woman standing in his way. His grandmother, the Empress Dowager Dou. Dou believed in Huang Lao's philosophy. She advocated non-action, which means doing nothing. Little Liu Che wanted to reform. Grandma said no, he wanted to fight. Grandma said no, he wanted to reuse Confucian scholars. Grandma said no. Liu Che could only wait for 4 years. In 135 BC, Dou finally passed away. Emperor Wudi Liu Che was 20 years old. What was the first thing he did? He invited all the Huanglao scholars that his grandmother liked, and invited all the Confucian scholars in. Then he held a high-level meeting. The topic was only one: let's fight the Huns. The whole court was divided into two factions. The advocates said the Huns were too much. They would besieged Mount Beidan in Gaosuijira and married for decades, and sent princesses, money, and silk every year. They still came to rob and fight. The peace faction said, why fight? They can come and go like the wind on horses, and we can't even catch up. Liu Che's grandfather was surrounded by 300,000 troops. Can you beat them? Liu Che said, I don't care. He said to fight. In 133 BC, Liu Che planned the first large-scale military operation, Mai Plot. The plan was simple: entice the enemy, and then annihilate the 30,000 troops. On the way, the Xiongnu's leader and called a small Chinese officer. The officer was scared and revealed the entire plan. It's a pity that the plan was perfect, but the reality was cruel. The Xiongnu chief turned around and ran. The 300,000 Han army waited in vain. The Mai plot was a complete failure. Liu Che was very angry, and the consequences were serious. He said to lure the enemy, but it didn't work, right? Then I'll fight them head on. Want cavalry? You need generals. You need money. You have plenty. His grandfather and father had saved money for 40 years, and it was finally going to be used. In the next few years, Han Dynasty entered a state of full preparation. Liu Che ordered to raise a large number of horses. There were cavalry training figures everywhere in China. Blacksmiths worked day and night to make weapons. At the same time, he recruited talents nationwide. No matter who you are, as long as you have the ability, you can become an official or a general. A vigorous preparation for war began. It was in this large recruitment that a man who would change history appeared. His name is Wei Qing. He was born a slave, a professional groom. Can you imagine a groom who takes care of the emperor's sister's horses, would later become one of the greatest generals in Chinese history? But reality is more bizarre than fiction. The story begins with his sister Wei Zifu. Wei Zifu was originally a sinner in Pingyan Prince's house. By chance, Emperor Wudi took a fancy to her and took her into the palace. Then, the Wei family, one person was promoted, rose to prominence. His younger brother Wei Qing, a groom, was promoted to the position of Zhang Qian, a good officer position. Liu Che may have just said it casually, but he didn't know that this sentient sent a nuclear bomb. In 1209 BC, Wei Qing led his troops for the first time. At that time, Liu Che sent 4 armies to attack the Huns, but all 3 lost. Only Wei Qing, the former groom, went deep into the heart of the Huns. Longcheng was the holy land of the Han sacrifice, which is equivalent to their hometown. This battle, Wei Qing took the Han's hometown. Han dynasty finally won. Liu Che jumped for joy in Chang'an. From then on, Wei Qing was unstoppable. In 1207 BC, Battle of Heidao, Wei Qing recaptured the Heilui region. The Heidao region that had been occupied by the Huns. It was a super strategic location. From here, cavalry could reach Chang'an in 1 day. Once Heidao was recovered, the safety of Chang'an was guaranteed. Liu Che happily named Wei Qing as the general, the highest rank in the Han dynasty. From a groom to a general, it took Wei Qing less than 10 years. But Wei Qing was not the most powerful. He also had a nephew, Huo Qubing. This young man can only be described in 3 words: crazy fierce. Huo Qubing followed Wei Qing on his 17th birthday. Other generals marched cautiously, and every step was cautious. Huo Qubing's style is to give me 800 elite riders, and I'll go for a big one. On his first expedition, he led 800 men to go deep into the Han's hinterland, killing over 2,000 Huns, including the Grand Shangyue's grandfather. He was 17 years old. Wei Qing was still brushing horses at his age. Liu Che was overjoyed and made Huo Qubing Marquis of Guangzhang, which means he was the best soldier. Then he asked him, "Young man, do you want to learn the art of war?" Huo Qubing said a super arrogant sentence. "It depends on the strategy. I don't need to learn ancient military strategies. It means fighting depends on on-the-spot performance. Why learn from those old-fashioned books?" Liu Che laughed heartily. He liked this personality. In 1201 BC, Battle of Hexi, Huo Qubing led his army to Chuzheng with the goal of the Hexi corridor, which is today's Gansu area. This area was too important. It was the key passage connecting the central plains and the western regions. Huo Qubing spent 6 days. He swept away 5 tribes of the Huns, killing the King Shelin and King Lahe of the Huns. Then he continued to pursue without stopping, until he reached Jianji in Gansu today. After this battle, the Hexi corridor belonged to the Han dynasty. After the Hexi corridor was conquered, the Han dynasty established 4 counties here: Wuwei, Zhenji, Juyuan, and Danhuang. Isn't the name cool? Each of them has a history of over 2,000 years. From then on, the Han dynasty had a passage to the west. This passage was later called the Silk Road. But Huo Qubing's most glorious battle had not yet come. In 19 BC, Emperor Wu of Han decided to have a final decisive battle to completely destroy the main force of the Huns. He gathered 100,000 cavalry. Yes, 100,000. Not to mention hundreds of thousands of infantry for logistics. Wei Qing and Huo Qubing each led 50,000 cavalry, and divided into 2 groups. This was the largest military operation in the history of the Han dynasty. The largest military operation in the history of the Han dynasty. When the Xiongnu Chen Yu heard the news, also gathered all the fighting men. A decisive battle to determine the fate of East Asia was about to begin. Wei Qing encountered the main force of the Xiongnu. He succeeded the Xiongnu's leader, deployed his elite troops. With over 10,000 cavalry waiting in battle, Wei Qing did not charge head-on. He ordered his troops to form a circular position with chariots, which was equivalent to the ancient armored defense circle. Then he sent 5,000 cavalry to attack tentatively. Both sides fought for a whole day, and no one could win. At this time, Wei Qing used his trick. At dusk, a strong wind suddenly blew up. Sunstorms covered the sky. Visibility was less than a few meters. The Huns were panicked. Wei Qing smiled. He sent the cavalry on both wings, taking advantage of the sandstorm, to quietly circle behind the Huns army, then attack from both sides. The Chen Yu of the Xiongnu was utterly dumbfounded. He broke through the chaos and fled. With several hundred personal guards, the remaining Xiongnu soldiers, leaderless, collapsed completely along the entire front. The Han army pursued the enemy for over 200 li and killed nearly 20,000 men. Huo Qubing was even more exaggerated. He attacked from the eastern front, galloping northward for over 2,000 miles. They didn't walk but ran. The cavalry charged at full speed. He bypassed the defense line of the left king of Xiongnu and directly attacked from the rear. The left king of the Huns didn't expect the Han army would come from that direction, because it was theoretically impossible. But Huo Qubing did it. In this battle, Huo Qubing killed over 70,000 people, capturing more than 80 nobles, including the king of Tangchao. Then he continued to pursue and chased all the way to Lanzhou Mountain, near Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia today, where he held a ceremony to worship the sky. This is the famous Fenglanjaks in history. What does it mean to see a wolf's nest? It means standing on the sacred mountain of the Huns, telling the heaven and earth, this is now the territory of the Han dynasty. This is the highest honor for a general. For more than 2,000 years, the dream of Chinese generals throughout history, dream was to see a wolf mountain. When Huo Qubing did this, he was only 22 years old. Everyone, the age of graduating from college. The Battle of Mobei was a watershed in the war between Han and Xiongnu. After the battle, the Huns were badly damaged and could no longer invade on a large scale. The Xiongnu fled far away, and there was no king's court in Mobei. The translation is, the Huns fled. They ran away far away. There was no more their royal court on the Mongolian grassland. Liu Che finally realized his dream. But what about the cost? Let's do the math. 100,000 cavalry went on an expedition, each with the war horse, plus spear horses. Hundreds of thousands of horses were needed. Hundreds of thousands of infantrymen were responsible for logistics, to transport food and weapons. In the Battle of Mobei, how much supplies were consumed? The official records of the Han dynasty show that more than 100,000 horses died, and countless money and grain were consumed. Emperors Wen and Jing saved for 40 years. Liu Che spent it in more than 10 years. What if the money was spent? Tax increase. Liu Che invented a new fiscal policy. Salt and iron monopoly. Salt and iron were all operated by the state. Private people were not allowed to touch. This system was later used by China, used by Chinese dynasties for over 2,000 years. Then a new currency was issued. White deerskin currency and 3 grades of platinum. Simply put, they printed money when they were short of money. As a result, inflation, prices soared, and the people suffered greatly. War is not just a matter of spending money. It also killed people. The population of the Han dynasty dropped by nearly half during Emperor Wu's reign. You heard it right, from the peak of 60 million to over 30 million. Some died in war, some died of exhaustion, and some starved to death. Liu Che's empire became larger and larger, but fewer and fewer people lived in it. But Liu Che didn't care about these. He continued to fight, and continued to expand, and continued to spend money. The territory of the Han dynasty expanded more than twice. The northeast reached Korea, south to Vietnam, and west to Central Asia. Ambassadors and merchants from various countries in the western regions, and merchants kept coming to China. They brought grapes, alfalfa, pomegranates, walnuts. These things we eat today were introduced to China at that time. Chang'an became the most prosperous international metropolis. But behind the brilliance was a mess. In his later years, Liu Che often sat alone in the hall in the days. He looked at his vast empire map, and then looked at the empty treasury. He didn't know what he was thinking. Maybe he was thinking of his grandfather's patched clothes, or maybe his father's words that enough is enough, or maybe he was wondering if he had done something wrong. Before talking about Liu Che's tragic old age, we need to talk about an important episode first. In 138 BC, Liu Che sent someone to the western regions. This man was Zhang Qian. What was his mission? To contact the Dayuezi and unite to attack the Huns. In other words, to find the enemy of the Huns and form an alliance with them. It sounds simple, right? But when Zhang Qian set off, he was gone for 13 years. It's not because he didn't want to come back, but because he was captured by the Huns and imprisoned for 10 years. As soon as Zhang Qian left the Hexi corridor, he was captured by the Huns. The Chen Yu asked him, "You went to find the Dayuezi. Are you stupid? The Dayuezi is my enemy. If I go to Nonyu, would you let me go?" Zhang Qian was detained by the Huns. The Huns treated him well. They gave him a wife and had a child, and let him live a normal nomadic life. But Zhang Qian did not forget his mission. He kept waiting. He waited for 10 years. One day, Zhang Qian escaped during the chaos. He didn't escape east to China, but went west. He continued to fulfill his mission. A man who had been in prison for 10 years. His first reaction after escaping was not to go home, but continued his mission. What kind of professionalism is this? He crossed Don, today's Fergana Valley, and passed through Khotan, today's Uzbekistan, and finally found the Dayuesi in today's northern Afghanistan. But the Dayuesi people didn't want to fight anymore. They lived comfortably in the new place. Zhang Qian said, "Come back with me to fight the Huns." They said no, thank you. Zhang Qian returned to Chang'an in 212 BC. Finally returned to Chang'an in 126. When he set off, there were over 100 people, but only to return after 13 years. What did he bring back? It wasn't a military alliance. They didn't want to fight anymore, but he brought back something more important: intelligence. The customs, geography, products, politics, and military affairs. There was also a map. Liu Che looked at the map. His eyes were shining. He knew a world bigger than the Huns. The world was waiting for him to conquer. This is the beginning of the Silk Road. In his later years, Liu Che completely changed into another person. He was suspicious, paranoid, and cruel. Perhaps he killed too much in his life, and felt uneasy. Perhaps it was the passing of time, and feared death extremely. He was obsessed with alchemy, and wanted to live forever. He was deceived again and again, but he never wanted to wake up, because he dared not face, no matter how great the emperor is, will eventually come to an end. In 91 BC, a catastrophe came, which is the famous witchcraft incident in history. Someone accused Prime Minister Gongsun of cursing the emperor. Liu Che believed it without doubt, and executed Gongshan he and his entire family. From then on, false accusations spread like a plague. Everyone in the court was in fear. Zhang Qian, who was in charge of the investigation, always relied on his master. He had a long-standing feud with the crown prince, Liu Ru, for fear that after the emperor would die, his own life would be in danger. So he decided to strike first. Zhang Qian reported to Emperor Wu. There was witchcraft in the palace, and someone intended to harm the emperor. Liu Che immediately ordered a thorough investigation. Soon, Zhang Qian found in the prince's palace, found the cursed dolls and talismans. Prince Liu Ru was speechless, knowing that his father would not listen to any explanation. Desperate, he followed the advice, and chose to strike first. Liu Ru falsely issued an imperial decree, and mobilized the guards, and killed Zhang Qian on the spot. The news soon reached Emperor Wu's ears, and many people reported that he was rebelling. At first, he didn't believe it, but more and more rumors spread. Eventually, he was furious, ordered troops to suppress, defeated Liu Ru, fled Chang'an with his 2 sons, hid in Quanzhou village. Chasers came one after another. The corner prince hanged himself. His 2 sons were also brutally killed. The prince's family was almost killed. Only a newborn baby survived. This child's name was Liu Bingyi, who would later become Emperor Xuan of Han Dynasty. After the storm settled, the truth finally came to light. Only then did Liu Che realize that the prince was wrongfully killed. Endless remorse welled up in his heart. He killed Zhang Qian's 3 clans, and built the Temple of the Sun to mourn his son. But no matter how gorgeous the palace was, it couldn't bring back his loved ones. In his later years, Emperor Wu often sat alone, stayed in the empty palace, looking at the prince's belongings, and feeling sad. He fought against the Huns in the north, and opened up the western regions, and expanded the territory of the Han Dynasty several times, achieving great achievements. But he ultimately lost his closest relatives. In 89 BC, Han Emperor issued the Lentire Apology Edict. He confessed to the world, "Since I ascended the throne, I've been reckless, and years of wars have made the people suffer." He deeply regretted. Since then, the Han Dynasty stopped foreign wars, and fully restored agricultural production, and rested the people. Emperor Wu Di of Han was a complex monarch. He was cruel and suspicious, and vain, but also had great wisdom. With lasting achievements, the territory of the Han Dynasty expanded from 2 million square kilometers to 6 million square kilometers. He established Confucianism as the orthodox ideology, This system was used by later dynasties for 2,000 years. He sent Zhang Qian to the western regions and opened up the world-famous Silk Road. This ancient road lasted for 1,500 years, connecting east and west. Silk, porcelain, and tea were exported overseas. Grapes, pomegranates, carrots, and other crops were introduced. The mistakes made by Emperor Wu in his later years are regrettable, but the path he opened up completely changed world history. After Emperor Wu died, Liu Che, who was 8 years old, succeeded him, who was also Emperor Zhang. The Xiongnu thought the Han dynasty was leaderless and wanted to take the opportunity to invade, but they didn't know that Liu Che left behind a powerful empire with a solid foundation. The wars exhausted the national strength of the era, but the territory, system, and trade routes became the eternal wealth of China. The era of Emperor Wu of Han ended. The prosperous era of the Han dynasty had just reached its peak. The Silk Road is called the earliest version of globalization 1.0, and it was this emperor with both merits and demerits. In the next episode, let's walk into this, the 1,000-year-old trade route that changed the world, the Silk Road.